ever have to stay where you are. You always have a choice. Is it going to be easy? No, not necessarily, right? But we
Mhm.
all have a choice to decide this is not how my story is going to end. Whenever I'm in crisis, okay, this is not how my story is going to end. What can I do to make sure that I change the narrative based on where I am right now? And helping people to see that sometimes is the key that unlocks a lot of change in the lives of other people.
Cause of noise, hear rewind, breathe it in. Your permission to reflect and reset begins. Dr. Sarah, the mind is high. Brian gets the heart just right. Lena, the coach to ignite. Oh, cause of noise, reflect and reset. Cause of noise, reflect and reset. Your time, your space, your life, your best. Cause of noise, reflect and reset.
Hey, welcome to Pause the Noise, where we give you permission to reflect and reset. I am Brian Stokes. We have Dr. Sarah Nicolas and Coach Lena Wilson. How y'all feeling today, ladies?
We're
Feeling good.
great.
Feeling
Doing
good.
well.
All right. This is our intro episode, and we just want to talk about this platform, how we met, who we are. Just want y'all to get to know us and feel us for, what we bring and what we represent. So myself, Lena, and Dr. Nicolas met. I'm not gonna call Dr. I'm calling her Dr. Sarah. That's what we really call her.
Just
We call her
Sarah's good. That's where we're going with.
We met at an entrepreneurial class, and our souls kindled quickly, and we would kiki in class, and then we said, okay, now that this class is done and we've graduated, we got our certificate to do better and make better businesses. What can we do next? So we went out to breakfast, and I was like, hey, can y'all want to do a show together? And they was like, huh? And I was like, y'all want to do a little show together? You want us on an episode? I'm like, no, I want a whole and Lena said, so you want us to do a podcast together and come together every time? Yes, I want us all to be together. So that's how we got here. With that, I'm gonna let y'all talk about yourselves, because I could talk about y'all forever, but I know you would know better. Lena, can we start with you? Just about, you're not only a life coach, but you're a transition coach. What does that mean? How does that connect with you in your life?
Yeah, of course. So I love that we all got together in class, and Brian and I, we sat together, and it was so funny that we would have these moments where we would just look at each other and really try not to laugh at some of the funniest things. But I actually worked in corporate for 25 years in corporate HR. And in each of those spaces, all my roles in HR, I did coaching in some capacity. So coaching became something that I love very early in my career. And I had the privilege of coaching employees and leaders. And it's something that we go through all the time. Change is inevitable in life. We're always going through some type of transition.
Absolutely.
So it seemed like it was a recurring theme in my career and something that I had done fairly well. And then when I think about my personal life, I've also gone through pretty significant transition. So when I think about, even I lived and I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. So I was born in the States, but I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, and I went to high school there and everything. When I graduated from high school, I came back to the States. My parents wanted me to experience kind of college here. And that was my first major transition, I would say, in life, right? Like, I don't remember being adopted. So even though that's probably the first transition from the States to Trinidad, I don't remember that because I was only 2. But I just remember coming to the States and I had major culture shock. It just was, my world was entirely rocked. And I really wanted to go back to Trinidad, but my parents were pretty adamant that they wanted me to go to school here, right? So that was kind of my first real experience with transition. And I'll be honest, like, I didn't have the maturity, the tools, the resources to handle that well. So, dropped out of college. That's a whole nother story for another podcast. But, that was my first experience with a really big transition. And then, I would say, going through a divorce, very traumatic event for me. It was very painful. It was very hard, very difficult. And that was very redefining for me, because I think in that moment I realized, man, so many people get stuck in their pain, and I want to help people not get stuck in their transitions. It's very easy to happen where you just get stuck in that space and trying to move forward. And then I would say just even losing both of my parents who adopted me to cancer, that was yet another like major. It was about 6 years apart for each, but it is really difficult to not just lose a parent, but to kind of lose them to the same horrible illness. And that's a major transition. Like it's really, really difficult. And so finally, my biggest and most recent transition is leaving the corporate space after being in HR for that long. I was in corporate for 32 years total. I know I only look like I'm 20. I know. And so that I'm still adjusting to that. July is going to be 2 years this year. And, working, having a stable paycheck compared to working in entrepreneurship, it's just a whole different ball game. And so even though it's been a couple years, I've had to utilize my own tools that I coach people through in order to be successful in this space. And, now I'm going to be going through another transition as my daughter's going to be going to college. And, I'm going to be, an empty nester, even though I don't like that term empty nesting, nonetheless.
They can always come home.
Yeah.
Right.
So transition has been the core of what I've done. And I am just honored to be able to kind of sit in this space with, you, Brian, and Dr. Sarah to offer something that we hope to be very helpful in terms of, just sharing perspectives. And I think what's cool about us is that, we're all very different, right? And we have a female perspective, male perspective, we have millennial, we have, Gen X. So we have two generations here. And we have different backgrounds. And we just, wanted to come together, thanks to Brian, to really produce a really quality product to really offer people help. Especially, we know that mental health is at an all-time high crisis. And we just want to offer something that's real, right? I think that's important to highlight, something that's really real, but something that's also practical and also comes with some expertise, not just professionally, but just lived experiences as well. And we hope that, our audience will be able to see themselves, relate, connect, and hopefully walk away with some tools from our sharing.
Yeah,
So,
Lena, you have, girl. So you talk. I'm like, how you still standing? How do you still go? Because from adoption to moving to the States to losing your parents to the same thing, to divorce, to being married again, to having an 18-year-old daughter now, and then now she's about to move out the home and go to college. I mean, heck, you the transition queen. Because I'm like, that seems like more than one, lifetime just in that. And to be here smiling, to still have joy and understanding that in each transition you can move forward. It's just beautiful to see. Just know that you carry that weight and that you still gracefully, move through that. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Sarah, psychologist, business owner, entrepreneur. What's up? How'd you get here?
Well, before I even start, I want to say that, Lena, I really loved your description of what we're trying to do here, because I really loved the fact that you said it was going to be real but practical. Because I think if I were to sum up myself, and what I loved about this idea was the idea of bringing an authentic space where we could also give folks practical tools, since we are all so embedded in the space of mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. And so thank you for sharing that so concisely in such a lovely way. And then again, before I introduce myself, I do want to just say reasons why I loved Brian and Lena from the start. The first thing I noticed about Brian was in our entrepreneurial class, which is where we met. The instructor asked Brian what books he was reading, and he said that he was reading a book about decolonizing mental health or psychology. And I was like, yes, that's my guy, because I love, first of all, the book that he spoke about is one of my favorite psychology books. And I knew that he would think about things in a big systemic way. So I immediately connected with him. And then Lena, she spoke about using AI to complete her goals for the year. And I was like, I need that energy in my life. I need to use AI to complete some goals. And I'm pretty sure I went home that day and kind of used AI to level set for the entire year. And even as we have been creating this podcast, just speaking through it, I have just had so much deep appreciation and respect for a level of structure and deep thinking and professionalism that you bring to our process. And so those are just the first things that just really connected me to you all. Me as a person, like you, Lena, I grew up in the Caribbean. I'm from Jamaica and have lived here for most of my life. And when we talk more about transitions, I can definitely tell you about a number of transitions I've had there. But I came to the US when I was really young, and I became a psychologist by profession. And people many times ask me, why did you want to become a psychologist? And I first jokingly say, well, I just really enjoy knowing people's business, which is not necessarily a lie. But I've genuinely just always have had a fascination for human behavior. I was one of those very lucky people who from high school just knew they wanted to be a psychologist, just always had a love for people and understanding for human behavior. And I never wavered. I stayed the same in college, and I just like wrote it for 10 years. And I feel that that's a very strong privilege and gift that I was given that level of fortitude in my decision to become a psychologist in my profession. And the type of psychologist I decided to become was a trauma psychologist. And the reason I became a trauma psychologist is because I always wanted to know, understand, and hear the stories of the deepest, most vulnerable things that we will ever experience in our lives. I live my life in pursuit of helping people through the hardest times in their life. That's why I decided to work for the VA. I specialized in sexual trauma, military sexual trauma, and really thought a lot of purpose and gained a lot of purpose from my work in working with veterans and helping them through those stories. Then I too went into the corporate space and helped to train many a therapist in the art of psychology and the art of mental health. And now I own my own private practice where it's Tampa Counseling and Wellness, where we do general mental health for the city of Tampa, but I also do a lot of mental health evaluations for veterans as they struggle to help them get their benefits. And in this journey into entrepreneurship, I've had to dig deep within myself as well, dig deep within my understanding of who I am and who I decided to become as a professional. Because as somebody from another country, having to assimilate into a new country, having to assimilate into a certain culture when it comes to corporate culture, those were big struggles for me. As you will probably see throughout our time on this platform, and as Brian and Lena have already been exposed to, I'm a very down to earth, kind of call it like it is person. And that is both a blessing and a curse, where I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve and say what needs to be said. And that can be very helpful in building deep connections with people, but not necessarily great for a corporate career. So I will talk about those transitions as well, and parts of myself that I have decided to remain authentic in at the behest of a professional career, but spaces in my life where I've also decided that I want to grow and improve in how I present myself to the world in order to gain professional respect. And so those are the things that I hope to bring. I hope to bring a deep understanding of trauma, because we all have trauma, whether they're big traumas or small traumas.
Yeah.
I am a scientist practitioner by trade, which means that I am deeply grounded in research and evidence-based practice. And so I do hope to bring that evidence-based practice to this space so that you all can have tools that are grounded in research. But I also come from a space where I believe that even we can mental ninja trick ourselves as much as we want, and the systems that are around us are going to impact us no matter how much we try to self-care ourselves out of any situation. And so I do hope that we are able to talk about larger systems on this podcast and what we can do about things that we don't necessarily have a lot of control over. So that's me.
awesome. You know what's so interesting? I'm like, they don't know you yet, Dr. Sarah. However, Dr. Sarah just said everything she says so nice, so eloquently. You catch Dr. Sarah on a good day, you might think she's a whole different person. Because I'm like, okay, thank you. Thanks for giving them the groundwork. And then you're going to see Sarah pop off. You're going to be like, oh, Dr. Sarah. Okay, got it.
Listen, I promised
Positive
Lena that I
evidence
would
for
not
real.
cuss on this podcast, so I will not cuss on this podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah.
Yes, but thank you, Dr. Sarah. When we first saw Dr. Sarah in class, she spoke and we are like, okay, we're not really going to touch on her because she's just like, she is the most brilliant person in the room. Clearly, leave her alone, leave her be. And then when we got in a conversation with her, I'm like, oh, she's a normal human being and she is clearly a civil rights activist. Okay, got it. We can rock with you. But I definitely appreciate your expertise and your mindset and just how easily you are able to not only connect with vets, but provide solutions for them for the betterment of their life. Because I feel like the veterans are so much forgotten about because we see them in uniform. It's like, oh, thank you for your service, all yada yada. And then once it's over, it's like, okay. And you're like,
Absolutely.
no, we need to take care of them. They fought for us. Let's get some things in order. So thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm Brian. I got my shirts made for my business. Brian Stokes, MSW therapist. uh, and how I got here. In the beginning, I didn't think I wanted to be a therapist. I thought I just wanted to be just a social worker, which by trade I technically like still am. I began working with young men at a group home. I was a program supervisor for many years there, and I said I need to do something more that helps my community. And where I landed at was the DCFS, some people call it Department of Social Services. And I started to work with fathers. They had a program there and I was working with fathers. And I did that for 1 year. And I said, okay, I need to do something that's going to help them even more where I have more autonomy. Because I'm like, they're telling me what to do, but I'm like, you can list something out for a plan, but when you're in the community, you're like, what do they actually need? Okay, the grant is saying this, but what do we actually need for the community to build better? And at this time, it was all men of color. So I'm like, how can we make the community better? And so, I took some time, I took a break, I went back to school, I got my master's, I became a therapist, opened up a private practice, and I primarily work with men of color, fathers, and couples. And I found that starting with this family aspect of it, because now I was working with, in the beginning of my career with the young men. Now these young men are the fathers, so it's like, okay, I'm carrying you over, but I'm finding that working with the fathers helps the betterment of family. Working with the couples helps the betterment of family. And my desire is always for people to be loved, to be seen, and to be covered. That is my desire. And with that, I love to provide not only support, but tools that help you from day to day. Because some people say sometimes, and I am a Christian. Sometimes people say just give it to God. And this past, I had a session 2 weeks ago. And he is actively in his faith. And he says, "What does that mean? Like, give it to God? What am I giving?" And I'm just like, you know what? You make a lot of sense because people are just saying, "Oh, I'm going to pray for you," and you're like, okay. And then now what? It's like, what do I need to do to get through? So it's like you have this spiritual aspect of things. It's like, what are the tools? And we talked about it and we went through it. And for instance, this is just small. We were just talking about journaling, and he was like, "I don't really journal. I don't really write." And he came back and he's like, "Man, I journaled," and I was just like, "Yeah, this is me." And just to review and reflect the things that I actually want to do, it seems attainable because I put it on paper. In my mind, it was everywhere. I wrote it down. I was like, okay, I can actually do this. It's not that, confusing. So just simple tools like that. And that was just one off the top of the head. We didn't even really go deep. It was just like just that one thing. Because, a lot of people within my community don't have or go to therapy. And it is sort of taboo. It's getting better. But it's just about like I said, I want everybody to be loved, seen, and covered, even if it's you seeing yourself on paper, understanding that you can do the best. You have all the tools that you need. Everything that you need is in this space right now. So yeah, that's me. It's mostly therapy. I like to sing a little bit. I got a little bit of jokes, I like to be funny sometimes. And my idea for this space for this podcast, my desire really is, just like everybody said, to give tools, but also for you to feel supported. Like, hey, we are all going through it. Okay, I'm watching working professionals who are out here every day go through different things, go through transitions, and I find, okay, and they take the moment to pause. They take the moment to reflect. And what is our last one? Reflect and reset. They take the moment to reset the things that they are doing in their life. Because none of us here are perfect. We don't have all the answers and we don't have it all together. But what we do have are many different life experiences that we got through that we can bring to this platform to share with you, to feel loved, seen, covered, and supported. Because that really is our desire, for people to get that. And if you wanted to reach out, we are all in Florida. If you did want to reach out to us, easily connect. Lena can easily give a leadership expose of anything, coaching. Dr. Sarah booked and busy, but call her up and she can. It is true.
It's true.
Are you not, Dr. Sarah?
We have many, many good therapists at our practice.
Okay. Yes. But you just can't.
But I'm always open for a call or a DM.
Yeah. But she did train them. So how about that? And, to me as well, I provide therapy and I do coaching as well. But we really did want to provide this platform with these different, mindsets, just to show that we are here, we are together, and we are wanting to make a change.
Absolutely. And so I do want to talk a little bit about that, about our structure and the structure that we decided on for this podcast, because I think this the space of mental health, mental wellness, self-help, it can be a saturated space. And so when we were talking about what we want to provide to a community, we really decided that we wanted something short, quick, digestible, where we could talk about the noise, if you will, something about what's happening in our world around us, something that's happening within our lived experience, cultural phenomenons, research-based phenomenons, and what we're seeing in the statistics of just that are reflected in our lived experiences. Talk about the big things that everybody is struggling with. And then we decided, when we talk about reset and reflect, that the reset or the reflect would be, what is the big picture, right? Like if we're talking about a lived experience, if we're giving an example, what is the big picture of that, right? If you calmed down the mind and you had that one large truth of it all, what would that be? And then the reset are the tools. What tools are we going to provide you in order to work through that noise, work through that problem? And the thing that I love about us is that we're all going to give different types of tools because we all come from different backgrounds. For me, many of those things are going to be grounded in cognitive behavioral therapy. And you all can talk about the types of tools that, that's actually an interesting question. What types of tools do you tend to use? I tend to go very cognitive. I'm a worksheets girly. I like to give like a good prompt. And something that Lena is very strong in is grief. And it's actually interesting because whenever I was training therapists, the one thing that I was like, listen, you got to go to somebody else for grief. I just don't have any experience with that. And so I'm so grateful that of all of the things I could provide, grief is not one of them. So I'm so grateful that you're here. What kind of tools do you all hope to bring to the space?
So very similar. Some of it not necessarily all cognitive for me, obviously, but for me it's a lot of practicality. I like to coach from practicality, theory, and then lived experience. I think combining all of that is effective. So like Brian said, journaling is a big one. I also talk about, really helping the individual to understand how their current thought processes and emotions could be impacting how they move through a transition quickly or not so quickly. So, and I didn't share this at the beginning, but I lead with transition coach, but I'm also a grief coach. And the reason I got to that point, which I think is just important for our listeners to hear, is when I really got deeper in the work of transitions, I realized that in every transition, there is some element of grief that shows up. And that's because a transition usually is symbolic of the ending of something as you move into something new. And many people don't process the fact that they're in grief. They see grief typically, which I'll talk more about this, in another episode, but they don't see it as grief. And so if you don't know what a thing is, you won't know how to navigate that thing effectively, right? And so grief is one of those things that I have to approach slightly differently if we're just talking about grief, in that there's so many heavy emotions that happen when grief is present that we really have to walk through regulation, emotional regulation. How do you do that, right? It's not just, you can't just journal your feelings and you're better, right? It's talking through it. It's helping people to see themselves beyond where they are. So let's talk about, what does your ideal look like beyond where you are in this transition? Because so many times we get so focused on where we are, we don't give ourselves permission to look into the future and where and how we can become and how we can grow. And even Brian, when you said earlier, like, how I've been able to go through all the things that I've gone through and still smile and still have joy. And I am generally a very jovial person. It's because I have given myself permission very early in life to never get stuck in a situation, a circumstance, or something that's happening to me. And that's a choice. That's a choice. And sometimes I think people don't realize you don't ever have to stay where you are. You always have a choice. Is it going to be easy? No, not necessarily, right? But we all have a choice to decide, this is not how my story is going to end. Whenever I'm in crisis, okay, this is not how my story is going to end. What can I do to make sure that I change the narrative based on where I am right now? And helping people to see that sometimes is the key that unlocks a lot of change in the lives of other people. So I don't know that I always have a tangible resource, Sarah, versus like, I am anointed to do what I do. I am called to do what I do because I've gone through so much. But then when you couple that with kind of my expertise, like, I can unlock some phenomenal things when people are going through transitions.
Yeah, I'm definitely a CBT guy as well. However, I love a good somatic experience. So when you work with me, where are you feeling these things physically? And then with that, what are you doing every day physically? Because I'm finding that a lot of men that I work with, it's like, oh, I go to work. I'm like, but are you working out every day? Do you stretch in the morning? Do you stretch at night? Do you check in with yourself? Like, what are you feeling? It's like, no, why would I do that? It's like, oh, because you need to take care of yourself and your heart, and then that is connected, with your mind and your spirit, and things like that. I'm also big on letting them the somatic experience of yelling. Like, you can literally cuss me out in therapy, as in, like, you can talk to me, we'll do a role play, and you can get that all out. And then I'm listening, okay, and then now where are we going, like, with this? Because a lot of times with men, it's like we feel that women have this space to be emotional, like, out loud, but we have to, like, always hold it together. So sometimes it just needs to be a yell. It needs to be a growl of just getting it out, to feel like, okay, now I kind of feel hurt in that. Nobody actually had to see it. That's okay. So now how can we transfer this information for you to talk to your partner? Because you can't talk like that, but how can we, like, the communication piece better? So that is me with with the usage of.
I love that. I think one of the things that I think we all offer in our individual levels of expertise is creating safe spaces for people. And a lot of times people just need a safe space where they can just exhale and do, the reflection and the reset, and some guidance with resources to kind of keep going. And I think having a safe space, even though this is going to be a public platform, we still want to offer a space where you can see yourself, number one, in the different topics that we share, but then realize that you're not alone. So many times when we go through things, we feel like I am the only person who's going through this, or no one is going to understand what I'm going through. And I've learned in life that anything we go through, someone else has already been there. It doesn't matter what it is, someone else has already experienced it. And so hopefully this space, you'll be able to see yourself, know that you're not alone, but then walk away with something tangible that you can hopefully apply that will enhance your life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Me either. This is us, y'all. This is us. This is Pause the Noise, where we give you the permission to reflect and reset. And we will see you next week.